Awesome. And we're live.
Yeah, yeah.
So thanks for joining me, Garrett. I guess we could start with maybe a little bit of your background, like what you do on your day to day and yeah, I guess take it for what you will. So yeah.
That's well topic. What do I do with with nutshell? Yeah, my name's Garrett Prettyman. I operate Garrett Prettyman Coaching, where I work specifically with men. That is my primary way I'm spending my time these days is working with guys, helping them find their clarity of purpose and mission in life, specifically in relationships. So, but more in my past, I've always been entrepreneurial. Like I started a business in my teens. And I've always operated outside of the traditional pattern most guys go through of going to school, getting a job, and saving their money. At a very young age, I decided that I was just going to live my life on my terms. And so I just went into it oblivious and confident. And I made a lot of mistakes along the way. So I did build a company in my 20s that did generate a substantial amount of money for me, but I slowly built a monster. It's a monster that caged me in. The freedom I thought I was creating became the cage. And so I learned a lot about like when you're building the life you want, you have to take intentional steps along the way that are scalable, that are able to procure what you are wanting. And so that's something that's important to me these days. I'm out here in Washington at the moment. I'll be in Idaho next week because I've brought in rental homes into my life and I'm managing those and Airbnbs and things like that. And so I'm creating the sense of freedom with that kind of more passive income that I didn't get to experience in my business. So that's what I've been doing this week. I have been in a rental, putting moldings in a basement.
Sounds like fun.
I enjoy it.
Fair enough. Yeah, I think what you say really makes sense. A lot of people don't put any thought as to what they want, or they don't, they just go, 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 and they're like push, 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 and don't really set any intention from the get go, right? So it's like I feel like people need to really have their future, or not their future, but their what they want clear, right? And like, yeah, you had this great business. I'm sure it was going great for you, right? But I guess you realize like, oh, I don't want to be stuck in one place, or whatever it may have been for you. So I feel like that's a big thing that, and I feel like you see it more and more nowadays, but people wanting to have more freedom and such. But they want more freedom, and they don't say how or put any effort towards doing it, right? Maybe they get stuck or go on and spin their wheels a little bit, but yeah, I guess having that clarity of vision, I feel like, is very important. So yeah, it's definitely something I've been focusing on personally a lot recently.
I'm probably going to quote this all wrong, but there's a quote about how like replicating and growing a broken process doesn't fix it. And that's one thing when you have a small business, you have like a couple customers and there's a little bit of cash flow. There might be a few hiccups that you just kind of absorb along the way. Like, oh yeah, I kind of do spend maybe unnecessary amounts of time the way I manage my emails every morning, but it's not that bad, you know? Or maybe, yeah, when somebody reaches out to me, I do have to like put that data into like three different websites every happen. But it's not that big of a deal. You know, I just busted out. Let me tell you what, when you scale that up, that's the beast. You must sniff it out in those small stages. And it's easy to fall into that trap of just assuming that you're going to be the lucky one. Oh, I'm going to make a bunch of money. It'll be successful because I work hard, because I'm going to go all in. But what we're talking about and getting clear where we're going is if you can't reverse engineer the destination, because we don't know the specifics of that destination, like we just think, oh, it's a big number and we're going to make a big number. We can't reverse engineer down to a daily small process. It'll never be reached. We will chase that carrot and it'll never actually be ours because we hit a wall. It's invisible, but you'll feel it
Mhm.
in business when you grow it. You'll be like, it's starting to expand and then it like can't get past a certain point. And sometimes it's because we're operating a process we came up with, like maybe something dumb like emails. And now everybody's blowing all morning with the process that we brought into the system because we never addressed it in its infancy. We didn't think like, how could this maybe be done more efficiently or outsourced or delegated? We didn't come up with a process to handle it. We just assumed brute effort would solve the problem.
Definitely, definitely. I think you can sort of, that idea of chiseling away day by day rather, small little tasks. Like how do you build a sculpture, right? You chisel, it's one chisel at a time, right? And then eventually you end up with this beautiful sculpture. So, people get maybe a little bit overwhelmed by the final product rather than focusing on like the next chisel, right? And then they get overwhelmed and maybe get stuck in a rut and don't grow and don't move forward. So definitely identify with that, or I've been in that position in my life. So definitely, yeah, definitely. But hey, so I wanted to maybe ask you how you ended up in coaching. I mean, I know with part of getting that freedom, I know you had, I think we've spoken before, and that you said that it was in construction, your original business that you started in your 20s?
I was a general contractor, but we were
Mhm.
doing property maintenance.
Mm. Okay.
And yeah, I built a fleet. I had crew managers, administrative assistants. We had seasonal employees, full-time employees. We had accounts with commercial properties and residential properties. And what I realized is what's really important to me personally at the end of the day
Mhm.
is not being attached to a specific location and having the ability to scale profitability without it having to increase my time necessary. And so at first I was like, well, I've obviously built a business. I mean, it brought in several million, like it was generating, cash, but it aged me into where my soul was just dying. My
Mm.
happiness down, my spirit and drive to keep going was just drying up because it didn't feel fulfilling. And it's amazing. There's many things we do or force ourselves to do that we don't enjoy that honestly somebody else might really enjoy. And so towards the end, I started getting really creative on how could I turn this business into what I want to allow the life I want. That's what I brought in more administrative assistant people to take up the office. And that's when I realized I didn't have processes in place for them to replicate me there. So then I focused energy on creating processes so I could bring any Joe Blow into any position. And there was something in place to teach him my skills
Mm.
because I could be everywhere at once. And I did enable it to give me a lot of the freedom I wanted. My time was brought back. I was able to take long vacations. I was able to get another home in a different state and spend more time over there. And what really drove it home for me though was when I realized that for the lifestyle I want to live, the cost to bring those costs into my business was going to whittle down profit margins so narrow that I might as well just go work at McDonald's.
Right, right.
And so that was the what emerged for me is I realized, there's other areas I could be pouring the same amount of energy and the rewards would be so much greater. Moving towards the coaching, immediate location independence, as long as I got internet, I'm in business. Also, there's a big difference between starting a company and trying to have quantity for profit versus quality in the sense of like a
Mm.
high profit margin item. You only have to sell like one or two of them. But when you're doing something like a service where you're only getting like a 2% profit, you need to just like volume. It's all about volume. And so you need to choose your battle. Like, are you going to be that guy? You got to either go to the moon or just keep it small because anywhere in the middle, your profit is basically gone because you don't have enough volume, but you need more people for the volume, which takes away the profit there was. People are necessary to grow it. Is that the animal you want to manage?
Right, right. And you're speaking about your construction business at this point, right? Right. Yeah. I think there's a lot of ways that we can automate things nowadays, and maybe we can get a little bit lost in that. But I think if we maybe one thing I've been thinking about a lot recently is, if you put more and more, or if you focus more on the fact that you have, and if you focus on your abundance mindset, I guess, to put it that way, you can really think like, hey, where's my time most best spent, right? And it's like, where is my value in the business, right? Like, where should I put my effort in the day to day? Where do I want to put my effort, right? Because you can necessarily be good at something, but not necessarily want to do it every day, right? And so, if you really focus on the fact that there'll be more, I guess, in this context, money, right? You can really outsource a lot of things. And nowadays with virtual assistants and, you know, there's a plethora of online, like Fiverr and all these different websites that you can find people to help. And you can really just put in the effort into what you want to do. And if you outsource everything else, you can really grow rather quickly, I feel. So,
This is available to us now, or maybe for our dad or grandpa, that wasn't
mm,
bio. And there's two directions we could take this topic at this point, because yes, you can leverage these things to increase freedom, increase profitability, the abundance mindset. Like, I don't want to minimize the importance of personal development. Like, you do need to be like the most mature, or at least be the frequency in the company that people would look up to, because
right.
you are the one dealing with the upset customers. You are the one training the employees up. You are the one that has to listen to somebody and know how to de-escalate situation. You have to have a lot of emotional maturity, and you need to not be constantly feeling like other people are dictating your own experience. You have to see that they're just experiencing their own self right now, and stay grounded and clear. And like, it's like when you're at the wheel, let's say you're sleeping in a vehicle and you wake up and somebody's at the wheel.
Hmm.
Like, where are we going? He's like, I have no idea, man. It's like everybody in the car would freak out. But when the man at the wheel just says, hey, man, we'll be to Seattle in about 10 minutes. Well, you'll go right back to sleep. Trust the man. He knows where he's going. And as the leader of the business, you have to have that kind of energy of relaxing and having that confidence and that calm, unmovable groundedness about you. So that's the
Hmm.
one direction this can go. Here's the other reality that comes in is a lot of people don't realize the cage that they're trying to operate under. The fact that we use a fiat currency in of itself is dictating more about your company than any of that other stuff is. Because you are playing within a predetermined game. As soon as you think your profit margin is going to be where you want it to be, boom, inflation sneaks up behind you. As soon as you think you've adjusted your rates to make up for inflation, boom, taxes you didn't know even existed start showing up at your lap because you're a business now with employees. Labor laws come in you weren't anticipating putting in the budget. Now your cost to do service has tripled this year just so you can maintain a profit. And you're constantly chasing the carrot like that. It's because in an economy where money gets to be printed for free, by the time it trickles down to the common man, it's passed so many hands that it's inflated because they're adding to the pot faster than it's like it's no longer based on supply and demand.
Hmm.
It's based on who can create money for free without having to sell something. Who can create money for free because they just get to print it. There's only two people. It's banks and it's the Federal Reserve. They get to take your dollar and send out nine more just because. And you're working against that system that corporations, as soon as they start hogging a profit, they're taking cash out of the circulation, which is hurting the interest payments coming back to the Federal Reserve at the end of the day because it's staying in somebody else's corporation now instead of going back to them. So what they do is they use humanitarian causes to get people riled up and make the corporation seem like the bad guy so that they can legally put in employee benefits and things for the employer to handle that seem so good, helpful, and it cripples the profitability of the company. Why do you think Sears and Roebuck went out of business? Payroll got out of hand. Toys R Us, payroll got out of hand. And they do it in the name of we're trying to cool inflation right now. We're going to raise these rates. No, there always is an agenda that you will keep encountering in your business. And I kept feeling that invisible wall in my business. You got to a point, we can make another 100 grand. And then it would just be like, go on. And to get past that hurdle, you need to become like the Amazon or the Apple in industry. But even those guys pinned in a corner. I just saw on the news today that
Hmm.
I think it's Facebook is about to lay off like 10,000 people. It's because when inflation sneaks in, employee rates, they can't afford it and they have to let people go. And then the company gets to a critical financial point where the only way to get out of that is to bail them out because they're coming to the government and they're like, we're at your mercy. All these people are going to lose their jobs. That was always the plan. They wanted to be able to say, oh, here's a bailout cost. Look at GM, look at Boeing. Here, we're not going to let those people lose their jobs. And now for the rest of that company's life, they never need to make a profit because they get free money through loans to stay in.
Hmm.
Now they get to pay prevailing wage, whatever that is. Nobody else gets to. So the small guys put out, and that's the spot you find yourself in as a small guy. The only way to let this work in your favor is to be in place where you can generate funds through inflation causing it, like housing, it's the house through appreciation,
Mhm.
tax-free money, or being close to the faucet. So when the freshly printed dollars come out, those are government contracts. Those contractors are getting paid numbers they make up because the money that pays them is made up. Those guys get to have money that hasn't been inflated yet because it came straight off the press into their hand. So where you position yourself as far as how close you are to the faucet will affect your profitability. So all of that is what's going on while you're trying to be a good man with good intentions, maintaining profitability and starting a business, which seems so easy. Those complications are what I never saw coming when I started my business. I know that's quite a mouthful. Quick rundown on what it's like working inside of an economy based on a fiat dollar.
Wow. Yeah, I think, you think about a very long time ago, there was a pie and, if you wanted a part of that pie, you had to go siege and, take a piece of that pie, right? But now because of inflation and the way that our economy works now, that pie can get bigger, right?
Hmm.
And so then, like you were saying, if the little guy is there making, whatever his median wage is, and with inflation going up, what is it, 7, 8%? I mean, I know those figures are not exact, right? But going up like and going up 8%, and a company's never gonna up you by that inflation amount, right? So then the little guy or whatever you want to call him, is actually getting a decrease in salary from one year to the next, right? So, one thing that I really, really believe in, especially now in the economy that we're in now, I feel like the only way to really truly create wealth is to be outside of that. We're sort of past that maybe a couple generations ago where you look at housing costs, what my parents were able to buy a house for, how they were, the whole concept of save and save for retirement, all of that. I feel like it's in the economy that we're in now, it's not the right move to do. Like you have to really, build a business or create value and it's sort of a weird thing, like you were saying, like you really you money now is you can sort of create it out of nothing. Like, let's say you buy a house, you buy it off, not on the MLS or something, but let's say you make broker a real estate deal, right? And you buy it at 75% of what it's on the market, and you're able to sell it. So you just created money out of nothing in essence, right? So it's an interesting idea that I mean, I suppose has always existed in the past X amount of years, right? But I feel like it's something you really need to leverage now as opposed to previous years. So,
And it's really easy to get into the mechanics of why this works because
mhm,
technically, house is actually worth the same that it always has been. It's the paper that's worth less.
mhm,
Yes, that guy that's letting the inflation work in his favor is the one that has the asset that stays the same while the paper goes down because he can always cash that asset in for paper whenever he wants if it's liquid. So here's the deeper area though that guys have to work on. If you're not improving yourself as a man, if you're not learning how to think clearly and how to be calm and centered and focused as you move through your day with intention, you face the scary edges in your life necessary to make these kinds of changes. Because it's easy to say, oh, Garrett built a business, it made millions. And then he decided to let that go and he went a different direction. The amount of stress I had to face to possibly lose all of my homes, not know how I was going to buy food that month, not having any, there's nobody coming in saying, oh, if this fails, don't worry, we'll bail you out. Like you have to face the desert straight on with just your own gut as the compass. And you have to
mm,
put your foot out in the wind and take that step, but nobody's supporting you. It takes a lot of courage and confidence to be that man. And when we talk about breaking out of the cage and not living the rat race that the system will keep you in if you keep playing that, it takes a tremendous amount of first. Nobody's going to come along and hold your hand. You have to do it on your own.
definitely. I think that's like the new battleground for men in the modern age, right?
Mhm.
It's where we have the opportunity to push forward and live our inner truth. And I feel like you actually use the word edge, and I was just reading The Way of the Superior Man, and that's a great book. I'm sure I'll reread, which I don't often do. But, yeah, just living on that, metaphorical edge and pushing and being comfortable with fear and really, not going too far to where you're overwhelmed and can't handle it, but not, living in comfort. And, maybe finding that edge is maybe not an easy thing, you know? Yeah, you can definitely, I feel, find use fear as a signpost as to whether you're going in the right direction, right? Usually, if you're scared of something, it's because, well, I feel like you need to do it, especially as a man. So, yeah, it's definitely nice to have a sense of direction, right? And I feel like men in particular are very purpose driven. And one other thing that I realize is I feel more and more that that's one of the most important things that you need to have in life as a man. You need to really find that purpose and set it before anything else. I feel a lot of people, a lot of young men, well, just men in general, I suppose, they don't find that purpose before, let's say, getting married or, having kids or just finding a certain job. Maybe they just go into university, study something, and then like, okay, like this is it, right? This is what I'm going to do. And then, that sort of waterfalls into issues later in life, right? If you don't have that clear vision, if you don't have that purpose that you set before everything in your life, then you can be misguided. I feel a little in the future. So,
My brothers and I were just talking about that the other night because here's the pattern that most of us guys faced. We came into this world, we were little boys playing in the yard, having a good time, and we started to grow up. Wasn't our choice, just kind of happened. And it was just so nice when we were little. We could just go in the backyard and play on the swing set and play with our truck. And it was just like heaven on earth. And then all of a sudden, as we got older, there was responsibilities. And we had, even as you get older, there's bills and mortgages and jobs and things that we didn't want to do, but we found out it's necessary on this planet. And then during that phase is when we typically go from the safety of our house into creating a new home with a woman. And we never went through a season of maturity as a man because we went straight from having the feminine experience of our mother to the feminine experience of a partner out self reliance. We looked to her when it came to direction. We looked to her for what does she want? We looked to her to be approved of. And we built ourselves a boat that was sailing nowhere because all we knew is there was a girl with us and she was cute and my job is pretty decent. So this is a pretty amazing adventure. But when you're trying to have a relationship with a woman, that does not attract her. She wants to be with a man, and you can't forge your manhood unless you're in the absence of feminine support. And most of the ventures I've gone into when I've done a hard start, like when I'm starting a new business, we're talking 12 to 24 months. I'm pretty much unavailable. I am working hard. I'm putting my time in. I am like, I got to get this from being my side hustle to my main hustle. And to get
mm,
the engine going, it's like turning a flywheel. The inertia is nuts in the beginning, but once it gets going, that's when you can back off, outsource, delegate. It kind of has its own momentum then. Most women are not going to be down for sustaining that season. It's in their instincts to level up. They want the man that's already got the flywheel spinning. So I've lost girlfriends and so have my brothers over that season of getting the flywheel going. And really, to mature as a man and develop your own sense of self love and self appreciation and courage, all of that has to be forged just you in the wilderness. And then when you emerge with the flywheel moving, that's when the feminine comes in and says, that's an adventure I want to go on because they like where you're going and you were
mm,
going whether they wanted to or not.
right, right. Yeah, I suppose if you leave that track, right? If let's say you're in the grind, then you meet a woman, however interesting she may be, like if you put effort into her as opposed to your business or whatever, then she'll just lose respect for you, right? I feel like it's part of their, whatever it may be, if it's biological or evolutionary, right? But they're inclined to look for a man that isn't going to base their decisions off of what they think or their input. Well, I mean, you can always take input, right? But as long as your decision in the end is from your inner truth, right? I feel it because otherwise, if you don't make that decision from your inner truth, then you can end up blaming her and that, or, and it doesn't have to be a woman, actually. It can just be anybody, right? If you let others make your decisions rather than making your decisions from your inner truth,
Mhm.
then you can end up blaming others, and then you you're not taking ownership for your decisions, your life, your path, your purpose, right? So
Mm. It's not a fun, easy season
mm,
to put yourself through that because it hurts initially to not have somebody affirming, to not have somebody saying, "Wow, you're a badass man, keep going." Like you're on there, you're doing it for yourself. And that's when you're keenly aware of it. Am I on my mission or am I on somebody else's mission? Because if we're on somebody else's path, it'll seem very clear because somebody else walked it and we could repeat their path. But that's their path. What's your path? And I like to really push the mind to be beyond what we normally think. Because when we think of what's my path, we immediately just think of what our options are, right? Like, no, no, no. I know when you and I talked last time, we're like, let's think big. Like, do I even want to be in this country while I start
mm,
this? Should I be in a different country? And it's like, maybe it makes more sense to make money in that country, but to sell products in that country. Maybe it makes more sense to live like this for a while versus that. Like, we got to think outside the norms. I even like to challenge relationships in the sense of we stick to the patterns of society. Like, you should have a house, you should have a master bedroom, have a garage. It's like, well, who says that even accommodates the lifestyle I want? What if I want more of a community setting? What if I want three kitchens? So that way family can come over and they can have one and I can have one. That seems like it'd be a better Thanksgiving. But nobody thinks outside the box. They try to work within the cage. Like society has set up a cage for you to live in. If you're happy with that, stay there. But if you find yourself feeling out of place and that there's more, you're going to have to stick your foot out in the wind and get clear on what that is. And then how can you start making the most subtle change today to bring that around? It might just be making sure your laptop's charged so you can actually turn it on tonight to Google how to get an LLC started. It's like this first step.
definitely. I feel like people don't stop and evaluate what they want. I guess going back to what we were talking about, they don't stop and consider, you know, is this what I truly want, or is this what I sort of have been, I don't want to say indoctrinated with. That sounds a little too political, but is it something that that's built into me from when I grew up? From sort of make me think of a book, The Four Agreements. It's like these are just societal agreements that we that we don't question. And yeah, I mean, there's so many options now. There's, the internet has expanded our world. It's globalized. I like to say it's globalized opportunity. And you can, yeah, like you were saying, like we were chatting last time, where you can live in a different country. There's different options, and I was born and raised here in the US, and I feel like a lot of Americans don't even consider the idea of leaving outside the US. I mean, maybe I'm a little more inclined to do it because I'm the son of immigrants, right? And I grew up going outside the US and such. But nowadays, there's better interest rates in banks in Ecuador, or, I was just reading in Africa, there's several countries that have decided to cancel all capital gains tax. It's pretty incredible, right?
Right.
If you just are willing to open or expand your mind. So, but that's, it's not an easy thing to do. We say that, but maybe I feel like, you know, I'm sort of a firm believer that everything happens for a reason, right? And I didn't used to believe that, but I feel like everything that's happened in my life has really caused me to think the way I need to think to do the things that I know I want to do. So it's like maybe it's chicken and the egg or something like that. But yeah, I truly believe that, everything has a cause, what it may be, the universe, God, I mean, I'm not one to say, but it's definitely for a purpose, I feel. So
And the highly successful are these kinds of people. There are people that, as stuff comes up, it's not, oh, that blocked me. I couldn't do that. Man, it wasn't for those people, we would have been successful. No, they reckon that as they hit a wall in life, that is a message that I need to take a right or a left. That's not something to blame. Oh, it would have been a successful company if only this was this way.
Mhm.
Reality breaking through. And every time reality breaks through for us, we have a choice. Are we going to just simply accept it as it's just is? This is how it is. We can complain about our currency system. We can complain about the cage, but this is what we got to work with. So we can lean into a man who's done some work, doesn't get all bent out of shape. He just goes, that's interesting. I wonder an option is that I haven't thought of yet. What's a different direction I can go now since this is not viable? And then that gives him a sense of freedom. And that's essential to the heart of a man, that sense I have freedom. But if we think within the confines of what's been offered, if we blame people for why we're in the spot we're in, if we blame our partner for why our sex life sucks, we're letting go of all of the abilities to maintain freedom. And it's all within, it's internal. It's that ability to see it differently because the lens we were using might have made us feel like a victim, maybe felt like a waste. Maybe it felt like they were being a way that was over the top. But honestly, everybody's just reacting a lot of times to who we're being. And like you said you trust things come across your path for a reason. A man who has that, we call him a spiritually confident man because he doesn't wake up in the morning freaking out that gravity might stop today, float into the sky and die. Like that's not even a stress of his. And that bleeds into other areas of life. And you're just taking one step at a time and reckoning with reality as it surfaces and being thankful in those moments. You're holding it almost in a sense of high regard, like, oh, good. Now I get to know what's real, not what my perception was.
Yeah, I think it's empowering, I've definitely been in the position in my life where I felt, well, a lack of power, Like I felt like I wasn't in control of my life. So and then once you realize that it's up to you, it's your choice whether you're in control or not, and you're not reacting to life, you're living it rather, then it's an empowering feeling. You go through life a lot a lot more focused, a lot more purposeful, right? And well, let's just be honest, right? You're a lot happier. So it's and I feel like more, nowadays quite a lot of, I think it's definitely something with young men that is an issue. And I'm not sure exactly why that has, come about a bit more, sort of brings me back to thinking this generation or the past few generations, past 100 years maybe, they've, guys have gone off to war, then maybe there's been men that are, raised in single family or yeah, like single mother homes and maybe not had that same, you know, father figure or male figure right in their lives. And, maybe it could have been because of these wars, could have been several things, right? I mean, maybe 1,000 years ago, you grew up on a farm and you were working next to your father, right? And now, they go after the industrial revolution, they go into working in factories, and then you're not raised as much. You don't have that presence as much. So I feel like it's definitely been sort of a decline in the past, 100 or more years. So
You're making me think of something that's been on my mind this week. And it's the idea that a lot of the pressures, I'm thinking more of like a peer pressure. The peer pressure, the
mhm,
societal approved version of men
right.
is mostly fueled through a feminine perspective. And because of guys' insecurities, we tend to lean towards wanting their approval. We want to be chosen by women. We want to be accepted by women. We want to be loved by women. We want to be like desirable. And
Mhm.
so somehow, especially for those of us that leaned in the direction of, "Oh, I'll just be so nice and just what they want and not like those other assholes," up just hoarding the feminine perspective on a lot of stuff in society while we're literally standing there shooting ourselves in the foot. Because The man that feels safe to her is the big daddy with the arms that holds her tight when she's out of sorts. She feels safe there. And she's kicking and screaming and wants to run to her room and slam the door. But daddy's calm and he's secure and he's steady. That kind of masculine energy is not going to be praised. It's not going to be, it's going to seem counter to what feminine wants. But it's because we've seen through the thousands of years, like how feminine behaves, how masculine behaves. And when we use our male brains, we can see what works and what doesn't. And for the woman, she's in moments of giving a feeling. And for her in the moment, felt like that might not be what she wants. And so if we immediately abandon ship, change our values, chart a different course, so some approval, we're becoming the very thing that she'll end up resenting. So that's why it's so important to do development as a man for yourself before inviting a feminine person into that. Because our focus and our clarity is built on our values. It's clearly defined by our boundaries, and that creates a safety in the little realm, right? Within our blood is to be a king. Within the kingdom that we're building, sometimes we have to make hard calls for the sake of the realms, for the realm to exist, whether anybody agrees with it or not. But a man can't be clear and direct with his kingly energy if he's always used the opinions of something being approved to him through a feminine perspective.
Yeah, going back to the idea of, basing your decisions off of what you know, the woman in your life says. So it's definitely not something that's in the culture right now, I feel, because one thing that sort of comes to mind is sort of the whole red pill community, the whole masculine mindset thing that's going on through the internet.
Mhm.
It's ironic because I feel like, the last thing that they're really acting like is masculine because they're blaming women for all their issues. And
Yeah.
and it's the opposite of what you need to be doing, right? You need to be taking ownership of what you are, what your position in life, who's in your life, just everything, right? So, and that whole community is can have it's a bit dangerous in my opinion. So, and you can see how a lot of guys could fall into into those negative thoughts and actually just be not the type of man that we need in the world right now, right? So it's definitely a dangerous thing.
A reactive man is quick to point at the enemy and say they're the problem, but fighting the enemy is what ties you to the enemy. When the mature man emerges, he just reckons with things like I said, just it just is what it is. I don't need to fight it. I don't need to blame it. It just is. Now what am I gonna do? Who do I want to be today? What am I gonna create? Like that's in your power.
Hmm. We'll see. Yeah. It's an unfortunate thing, but we'll see how that all that pans out. Hopefully there's more better voices out there. So it's definitely just focusing on ownership. I mean, in reality, feel like the more we do what you're saying, the more we focus on that, the better we are that we can be as a society, right? Because I feel like you can sort of extrapolate this idea to like societal level.
Mm,
Right, like, if we wanna create a better society, I mean, in a sense, I feel like it's our job to do that as men, right? Like, I don't know, we can't and we live in a society right now that obviously, men and women are maybe in ambiguous roles and such, but I feel regardless if we want to get into a better position because some days I'm thinking I'm flipping through the news and such and I'm just like how in such a modern world can there still be all these wars going on, all these things that are just they don't quite match with what you think of in the modern technology that we have now, and there's a bit of dichotomy, right? Because like here in the US maybe we have certain luxuries that maybe the rest of the world doesn't have, right? But regardless, you know, I mean, even in the US, we can't decide, right? Because it's just two opposites fighting, two extremes fighting, right? So I feel like it's something that we need to focus on, and the more men that take responsibility, the more that we can have a better society. So
That is a whole
yeah.
topic because there's so much more than meets the eye. The general public is always being shown a front, and it's
Mhm,
always to distract from what's really going on. And this is alluding again to the things I experienced when I built my first business under the framework of what business should look like in America. Is we once you start really expanding your mind on how money works, we realize that with the way our system is now, the only way we can control another country is to keep them indebted to us and to wipe out their local markets so they are dependent upon the income sources that free money can provide. Here's an example. We come into a country and we say, oh, we're going to give them financial aid because they're so in a bad place right now. Well, everybody's ready to vote for that. Yeah. Give them some, help them. They're dying. We're going to be good in the world. This is all covert because now that we come in with our freely printed money, our inflation just went up. Now your banana costs $2, which raised your taxes because taxes are a percentage. Your
mhm.
one penny of tax is now almost 2 cents as well. So by giving them free money, we raised your taxes. You didn't see that coming, did you? Because you were told this story. And then it gets worse because now the, the country uses the free money to build a tire shop, a glass factory, maybe throw an Amazon in there. Now the local man cannot compete because people get to go work for that place and they get prevailing wage. They get retirement. How can the local peach grower compete with that? He's put out of business. And now the country is dependent on a standard it can't sustain because there isn't enough profitability. As soon as you start putting free money into a business, profitability is gone. Now they need more money. Oh, well, what do you know? We'll give you more money so you can pay the interest on the loan because you're about to default on that. Everybody's ready to let help happen. That's the humanitarian approach to get everybody thinking it's about one thing when it's really about another. It's about how can the workforce stay in their rat cage? Because every time we raise inflation and raise your taxes through inflation by giving away free money, you're pinned into your cage and can't get out. Now your student loan never get paid off. Now you can't afford a bigger, better car. You're stuck in the house you got. You got to have a two income stream now to live there. The cage is meant to keep you there. That's the intention. Once men step free from the cage, they're dangerous. They have ideas. They can create. Man is dumbed down by the cage, and it's a lot of it through the financial system. As an employee, you wouldn't catch wind of a lot of this, but when you start your own business and you start watching how cash moves through your company and how it's created and vaporized, whether you thought it was going to be or not, you're suddenly like, whoa, I see what I'm working with now.
Yeah, make it one aspect there that you made me think of is, and obviously I would want women to be able to do whatever it is that they want to be able to do. But one thing that is often said is that when women came into the workforce, it doubled the amount of employees, right? And it halved people's wages. And so then now you don't have any, well, one aspect is that you don't have raising your child. And if you don't have somebody raising your child, then the government's going to raise that child and just create another set of people that are going to be in that rat race or that cage, right? And so then you're just perpetuating that along and creating more and more people, right? And if you keep on doing that, then you're just creating employees, right? You're creating people to run your businesses and run your corporation or your large corporation, right? Because that's what they need. So
Exactly. Culture is set up to groom everybody to be a good worker bee.
mhm.
And every man kind of feels it. He kind of knows it. Like he's ready for Friday, not because he it's his job so much.
Right.
Deep down that he's working for the man. And we like to point at the man and say it's the guy's fault. That's what the reserve wants. They want you to point to the corporation. They want you
Blame
to point
others.
to the rich man and say, yeah, that dirty bastard hogging all the money around here. Because guess what? Now we have legal reason to pass more laws that'll shoot the guy in the foot and bring it to the point like Boeing and GM and many companies we can list that needed to be bailed out because they lost all profitability. And that's when the entire cage is permanently set into that company now. It's held in by it's no longer held in by profitability. They're at the mercy of the loans they must pay.
But in a sense, that makes it even easier for somebody that does leave the cage to build a business, right? Because all these big companies that you're talking about that are not profitable, that are stuck in their old ways, that aren't modernizing, then, for somebody that isn't in the cage and you want to build a business, then if anything, it's easier now than it was before. Because to innovate, these companies don't innovate and they don't understand modern marketing. They don't understand a lot of things, right? One thing I think about a lot is that marketing used to be owned by all these corporations, right? They had to pay large sums to get onto, your television or onto the radio before that, right?
Yeah.
And now, you can just put an Instagram ad or, whatever it is, Facebook ad, right? And build a company that will grow faster, and you can sell that company to the larger corporation, right? Because they can't innovate. So they're just going to buy it off you. And so you can easily, well, I say easily, right? But I'm saying it's comparatively easier than it was before. So
Yeah, we
yeah.
have a great opportunity, and for men to step into that is amazing. It's like it's being handed to you, and if you're not taking advantage of that, there's like a part of you that is just settled, which maybe for some guys that is their lot in life. They are totally cool, just work a 9 to 5, raise a few kids, just stay there. If that's your calling in life, you should do that. I think guys that are listening to this would know if it's they're not that.
Mhm.
They know if that's not what they were cut out to do. And again, expanding the mind beyond what we just see happening, the the banking system they don't have money. The FDIC that insures them doesn't have money. The entire system is held up through government bonds that the Federal Reserve and banks and the FDIC gets to loan against, because in the future the government will come clean on those bonds and pay them with your
Mhm.
tax dollars. And so it's an illusion that there's money, but there still runs on bank. There was a run on the Silicon Valley Bank this week. What is a run on a bank? It's when suddenly people are taking more money out than they even have, which is the situation of all banks. And as the cash you think you are saving from the profitability of your company to be vaporized like that doesn't exist. It's fake. It's a number on a computer. If we took all the paper bills out of society and sent them back from whence they came, we would see that there is a bigger number for even the national debt than there even is dollar bills. We've multiplied the numbers in computers at banks to be 9 times that of the dollar. And so you are working for a piece of paper that will be worth less and less going forward. And it's a very fast rate that it's losing its value. So you're like scooping water in a bucket with holes in it. You're like, wow, look how profitable we are. Constantly chasing that stinking carrot because they keep drilling bigger holes as fast as you can move the water. And that's the dilemma. That's what we're working in today. That what's probably moving towards is at some point, and this has been proven through history. With the Greeks ran into it, the Romans ran into it. You can only recirculate a large quantity of free money about 28 times, and then it runs into a wall that collapses the entire thing. And at that point, a new one has to emerge that everybody just has to adopt. Even in the US, we've gone through different dollar bills over the years already. We had a gold back one, we had some Confederate thing, then the
Mhm.
fiat came out after Nixon. Like it does go away. So you really want to be noticing, where am I moving my value into as I'm going through life? If I'm trying to accumulate cash, you're going to be smartest to move it into things that maintain value when that cash goes away. Not if, but when it goes away. And if you're trying to maintain a life of value in other aspects, where are you investing your energy? Are you investing it into something like a relationship that will be enduring? Are you investing it in something like a shallow relationship, which is not going to be enduring? Like we want to be intentional about where our energy is going in life, and that we're putting it into something that is not just a bucket with holes in it.
Right, right. Yeah, I think something that came to mind there is the whole idea of a 401k here in the US, right? Like you're just saving and saving, and man, that is just drilled into you that you need to have this 401k, or else you're just setting yourself up for failure, right? And with your book analogy, that's what you're creating, right? Because you're just, you may have it in like a mutual fund, ETF, or maybe you buy individual stocks from within your 401k, but even then, you're still with inflation, where it's at and the market's where they're at, you're just doing the same thing, right? You're losing cash and instead of putting it in an asset that can grow over time. So the the paradigm is changed, but people haven't caught up to that, right? So it's 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 an interesting thing. We'll see. Yeah. And you really made me think with this whole dollar. How many times did you say it was? 27, 29 times?
28 times you can do the whole circulation. I'd have to look at this at the article that in the book that I was reading that about to see exactly what the terms are for the 28
Hmm.
rotation. But it's all our entire system's been replicated before in history. It wasn't invented brand new. It was brought in from Europe. They've already been using it in England for a long time. And it only can go so many times and eventually it bites itself in the tail. Like I said, there isn't enough paper out there to satisfy the numbers. They don't match. They're disproportional. Every time you give the bank one piece of paper, they get to add zeros on their computer screen and send
Hmm.
it out as a car loan, as a home mortgage, as a student loan. There was no cash that they gave out. It's made up. And so when you're working for made up numbers, like it's it's just thin ice. And when governments do this, it's not even government. It's bigger and beyond that. If you look into the Rothschilds or
Hmm.
over in Germany back in the day, like they're the ones that conceived the idea that they could actually control the governments by being the bank. And we have a world bank. And when it hits that rotation where the cash is no longer of value because everybody went to the bank to get theirs and it couldn't be satisfied, like Silicon Valley this week,
Hmm.
they're forced have to adopt a new one. Well, guess who has the new one already? Well, the World Bank does. Here you go. We've built this amazing money. And here's why it's better than the last. Trade in your $4, you'll get one of these. And what are you going to do? If you try making your own money, they pass laws saying, oh, that's counterfeit. You can't do that. That's illegal. You can't print your own. So you got to take their printer money. And it's just, we're working in a system now that is, it's just not based on profitability. It's not based on supply and demand. It's all manipulated through give us a good reason to make more free money so people don't criticize this. And maybe even get a war going so people think it's about that. But keep that printer going and keep people in debt. And then we can control them.
Hmm.
We'll never break free.
Yeah, I think that's why so many people reacted to Bitcoin, right? I mean, and maybe it was something that could be yeah, that's decentralized, right? So it's not within the world bank, right?
Like,
And it's something I've been sort of turning in my head is like, I think I realized one day, I was like, what is a bank, right? Like what right? Like what makes them have the right to do what they do and how do they make money, right? So I mean, I know they have mortgage rates and that through that they have they make money on the money that they lend, right? But what stops somebody like me just creating a bank and having that as a business and let's say, which, you know, to a point, some of these Bitcoin wallets are banks, right?
mhm.
So yeah, something I was pondering just last week, right? Like what stops me from not maybe not necessarily Bitcoin. I don't know. I'm not one of those crazy Bitcoin obsessed people, but yeah, what stops me from doing something like that, right?
I like how you're thinking. This is how wealth is created when you get to add zeros on your computer just because. So
Right.
why can't we do this? Well, they passed some laws and made some rules on who can do that. You have to have, I think, $30 million in your bank account before you can start a bank in America. But guess what? Not in other countries. Look into Paraguay. Look into Panama. There's you can Google it quick. There's other countries where you don't need such a large amount. And guess what? You can raise that funding through investors. There's people that have literally ran Facebook ads about a new banking concept they had and had enough interest on like getting 30 million followers to their page that they went to investors and said, look at all these people that are down for this new style of bank. Never mind my little tissue I'm playing with. Yeah.
Mhm.
And boom, free money, just like that. And
Mhm.
anybody that's great read Think and Grow Rich would understand the concept that it starts as an idea and then you present it. You think Elon Musk had a dollar to his name when he started Tesla? No, he had an idea and people threw money at it when he made the company public. That's how money is created. It's always been that way. It's never been the profitability of selling the car. It's never been that, wow, that's a way better car. So he gets to charge more. Like there's a little bit of that. It's always been when the big free money is thrown at it. And so here's an ingenious way being a bank has actually happened before our very eyes. Look at Starbucks. They were on
Mm.
the fence of like, can we even stay open? Our profitability is getting so bad. Because guess what? There's the invisible wall they hit. That's what my company hit. And they're like, how can we get around this wall? They realized, let's make an app and you can have Starbucks. Put your cash in there. And now you can use that app to buy coffee. Well, guess what? Most people keep $10 in there, but only use a dollar or two at a time. So there's always more in the app than they're spending. Where's that extra money sitting? Oh, your Starbucks is now in Starbucks account. Thank you, sir, for that $10 that you didn't spend yet. Now I guess I'll invest that, maybe spend it myself, maybe give somebody a loan and use it as, it's like they became a bank.
Yeah, that's never saw it from that perspective. So yeah, you'll have you you had me there. That's incredible. I had heard about this Starbucks thing, right? I'm not a Starbucks person myself. Can't bring myself to do it. But definitely, yeah. Uh, hmm. I wonder. Although thinking of it, 30 million in the grand scheme of things isn't as large as I thought you would say. So it's not as bad, although, doing it in a different country would definitely be that don't have that 30 million limit is an interesting thought. So,
What the Federal Reserve has done to keep banking under control is the Federal Reserve gets to change the rates whenever they feel like it. Well, guess what? The bank borrowed money from the Federal Reserve to even be it to give out money. And yeah, you end up putting your money in the bank. It's like having a business with a card that says, just give us your money because we're a bank. So we do. We're like, oh, I'll open a checking account. I'll give you my money for no reason. Oh, thank you. Thank you for that money, sir. And now we're going to loan against it. But they also get a lot of money from the Federal Reserve and they pay that loan payment to the Federal Reserve every month. And the Federal Reserve gets to change that rate whenever they feel like it. So the bank was profitable. And now all of a sudden the rate went up. Or the bank's like, oh crap, how are we going to pay this loan this month? We can't. We're going to default on our loan. And the bank went out of business. So they come along and say, oh, bank, you can't make your payment. Well, we'll give you a new loan and then you can make your payment with that loan. If the bank is too small, they won't even offer that. They'll say, you know what? You can become a conglomerate of a larger bank. You can sell to a different bank and they'll take your assets and you can be saved in that way. Those are the two ways that banks get saved. But the system was set up for them to fail if they're not part of the bigger bank or dependent on, again, more loans. It's through loans that they're in the cage as well.
so they sort of sell off their debt, basically.
When they hit the fence of not being able to make
Right,
their own
right,
shipments.
right,
Yeah.
right. Hmm.
Yeah.
It's interesting. It sort of brings to mind the idea that nowadays, more so than actual dollar values, like your audience, your reach is the true value, right? Like your capacity to change in or just to influence people is the next currency in a
Yeah.
sense, right? So
I'm so glad you brought that up. That's spot on. The new currency is not cash, folks. It's influence. How many people can you touch? That's where value is.
I think, yeah, it's abstract, right? But I mean, it it's just like when we move from the gold standard
Mhm.
to the current system, right? We have nothing to back it anymore. But like you said, it's just zeros or ones and zeros in a computer. So who's to say that we can't somehow find a way to 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 value that in a sense? So yeah, we'll see. That'll be an interesting thing to see in the future for sure. All right. Well, I feel like this is a good stopping point. So I appreciate your time, and yeah, hopefully maybe at some point in the future I'll have you back on. We can talk. I'm sure we can talk for hours. So, but yeah, thanks so much, Garrett. I appreciate it.
You bet. It was exciting. I love talking about this stuff. I love pushing the mind beyond the normal perspective of what's going on. I love that you're a man who's passionate about improving himself and stepping into that scary edge and doing what he needs to do to get out of that cage for his own sense of freedom and happiness. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, I think definitely for me, it's not a choice. It's the only option, right? So hopefully,
Burn all the other ships.
what was that?
We get to the point where we burn all the other ships, so there isn't another option.
Right, right. Yeah, and hopefully this can help more people along the way. So yeah. All righty. Thank you so much.